On today's episode of the Mark-Titus-Show, can you smell that? There it is. Some madness is in the air. Illinois blows a 7-point lead with 40 seconds left at Penn State. I wish I could say I was shocked by this. No matter how hard Illinois tries, and there have been many times throughout this season where I was like, this Illinois team feels a little different. It's still Illinois basketball, and they still will shoot themselves in the foot. And Coleman Hawkins, who I want to love so much, will foul three-point shooters. And Illinois will squander a game they absolutely should not have lost at Penn State. Meanwhile, Kentucky blows a 15-point lead at LSU. This coming on the heels of spanking Auburn at Auburn, who Auburn does not lose at home almost ever. They had the graphic over the weekend during the whole game. They were pumping that out, saying Auburn never loses at home, which was probably a jinx in retrospect. Kentucky looks dominant. Looks way better than Auburn. Looks like they're putting it together. Into the first half against LSU, they're playing defense. They go on a crazy run. That game looks like they're going to put it away. LSU comes back, scores at the buzzer to beat Kentucky, and now we're right back to scratching our heads about Kentucky, trying to wonder if they're ever going to put it together fully. New Mexico wins a thriller versus Colorado State. The Mountain West is a very, very fun league. Might get 6 bids. In fact, I will say the Mountain West is going to get 6 bids in the NCAA tournament, which is awesome. And meanwhile, just as we're all getting comfortable with the idea that it's Uconn and Purdue versus the entire field, basically, Purdue loses to the Buckeyes. We're back, by the way. We'll talk about that. A very bad Ohio State team with an interim coach. Purdue goes on the road, loses. It was kind of a close game in the end, but it didn't really feel that close throughout. The only reason it was close is because Ohio State does not know how to close games. We closed this one. That was nice, but it should not have been that close in the end. Meanwhile, Uconn gets blown out at Creighton, and now we're back to trying to figure out who is the best team. Is it Houston? And maybe it's Houston. Maybe it was always Houston. Houston looked great against Iowa State, and by that I mean the defense looked great, but it was a muck fest, but that's what Houston does well. Maybe it's Arizona. It can't possibly be Arizona, right? Arizona loses to Oregon State. They let Stanford hang 100 on them. There's no way it's Arizona, but maybe it is Arizona. Who the hell knows? The only way to sort everything out, anytime I'm questioning the reality of college basketball, I have to turn to Old Reliable. I have to turn to the fraud power rankings. That's what we're doing today. I'm going to suss out who is good, who is not, to the best of my ability. This is all subject to change because that is how this season has gone, is just as soon as we think we have any idea what's going on, something changes. But for right now, here's how I see it. We're going to do the fraud power rankings. Let's get into it. All right, off the top, I want to say that I jinxed myself because if I remember right, the end of last show, I said something to TJ, like, next week we're back on a normal schedule, right? And
yep.
I asked you that. I remember this. I was
yes.
like, we're no hiccups. We're just going to do every Tuesday and Friday we'll put a show out. And you said yes. And then I went home, and I was sick as a dog. I woke up the next morning sick as a dog, and I've been fighting it ever since. I probably sound like shit to the podcast listeners, maybe to those of you watching on watching the stream as well. But it's probably more obvious if you're listening on the podcast that I do not sound great. But yeah, I jinxed everything, and I apologize. We did not do a show this week. I don't want to say that I was dying and that it's a miracle that I'm even standing today, but yeah, Ohio State is back, and I didn't even do a podcast, TJ. That's how bad it was. The Buckeyes beat Purdue, and every ounce of me was like, I got to get up and do a show, and I couldn't even do it. I couldn't even get out of bed.
Yeah, it's too funny. I would blame myself because you asked me if we were back to a normal schedule, and I said yes, so I'm the one that was wrong about that. Yeah. But also, you sacrificed yourself for the downfall of the Purdue Boilermakers.
I think that's what happened, yeah. Or Purdue fans poisoned me. It could be that as well. It could be like we know that Titus is going to, gloat, and he might have his dad on, probably will have his dad on. And I probably would have. And then now, all these days later, like, does anybody even care all the stuff that's happening in college basketball? UConn turns around, the number one team in the country. They get spanked at Creighton. And now all of a sudden, the Buckeyes moment in the sun. In fact, Ohio State plays at Minnesota tonight. We're going to lose by 20-plus probably because we can't win on the road. So everybody even listening to this is like, don't puff your chest out too much, buddy. You just lost to Minnesota last night. Right. That sucks, dude. I lost out on a great opportunity to just kind of be an insufferable asshole. And that's the whole point of doing the show. Anyway, before we lose to Minnesota, we're recording this before Buckeyes lose, so I'm just going to say that that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun on Sunday. The arena was packed. This is the worst attendance season in Ohio State men's basketball. Well, in the since like 2000 or 99, whenever they built the new arena. This is the worst attended season that Ohio State has had. So to see the arena packed, to see Jake Diebler so emotional, it was awesome. It was an awesome scene, and I wish it was more relevant to those of you listening. But unfortunately, I was on death's door and could not talk about it. So anyway, shout out to the Buckeyes. We're so fucking back, and I'm back to believing until tonight when we lose to Minnesota. Let's do some fraud power rankings. By the way, if this is a short episode, I apologize as well. I don't want to belabor it. I do feel like shit, but like I just want to be transparent with everybody as well. So if you're like, damn, he felt a little off, yeah, we're doing our best to get through it. I cannot believe that this is the case, but I really do think it's still that free throw stream. I really think it's like the free.
You shot yourself to death.
I think I'm gonna be like 54 years old, and I'm gonna be like, it all started back those free throws, those damn free throws. But anyway, we'll get through it. I do want to talk about the fraud power rankings. I want to talk about all the stuff going on in college basketball because it's heating up, folks. The temperature here in Chicago is getting warm, and so is the temperature in the college basketball landscape. It is absolutely heating up. I want to start with an honorable mention. Jay Williams gets an honorable mention. He is not going on the fraud power rankings because Jay Williams, as a commentator, has been a fraud for a while to me, and this is nothing new. I forget what game it was. I think it was one of those early games in Madison Square Garden. The Uconn and Texas, and I want to say Louisville and Indiana. It was like that doubleheader that they did. Jay Will was on the call, and I remember doing a show after that and just being like, this guy, holy shit, he sucks. And I try not to – I can bitch about just about anything in basketball, so like this is probably not accurate at all, but I swear to God, I try not to be a guy who bitches about commentators too much because one, I know how hard the job is from first-hand experience trying to call a St. John's game once upon a time. And two, I typically don't even care. Like, there are good commentators and bad commentators, and I'm not one that really, like, notices that much. But I remember watching the game when Jay Williams was calling, and I was like, holy shit, he's bad at this. He's really, really bad. Very annoying. Has no idea what he's talking about. Just yapping. Just the bro is yapping and about the most insane shit. And it drove me crazy. So anyway, I've been privy to Jay Williams being terrible at this for a while, and I know he's been a talking head for a while, but like he's back into college basketball and diving in this season, and I picked up very early that he sucks, and now he's back into the fray with the Caitlin Clark stuff, and I'm very confused by like when he said it on game day that Caitlin Clark is not great. I kind of knew that he was. I knew that this wasn't the case, but part of me wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and just be like, maybe he didn't fully mean that. Maybe he like meant something else. Maybe he's just being dense on purpose for the sake of argument. Like, can she be great if she hasn't won a title? All that sort of thing. He's done nothing but double down on it since. And it's very stupid. But also, it's not that surprising from Jay Will, and I don't really understand what his lane is as a talking head right now. It's very confusing, and I say this as a guy who I believe that Jason Williams might be the best point guard I've ever seen play college basketball. He was so fucking good at Duke, and it breaks my heart what he's become because I very much liked it. He might be my favorite Duke basketball player ever. Like I freaking loved watching him play when he was at Duke so much. I loved watching him miss the free throw against Indiana in 2002 in the Sweet 16 as well, when he was fouled at the end of the game and then missed the free throw to tie the game. But yeah, I don't understand what's going on with Caitlin Clark. We talked about this on Mostly Sports a little bit a week ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. The Caitlin Clark has just become I don't really fully understand what it is, but she's just become such a lightning rod. And I think the obvious answer, the reductionist answer, with the Angel Reese Caitlin Clark game last year. It's like it's a black versus white divide in this country, and the black people want to support Angel Reese and the white people want to support Caitlin Clark. And I think that's what a lot of people want to point to as to why like Caitlin Clark is such a divisive figure. But I don't really buy that because there are a ton of white girls that have been good at basketball before. And, like, so that part doesn't really fully – because, like, when we talked about it on Mostly Sports, I had people like, come on, man, you know what the deal is. Like, the reason people are fired up about Caitlin Clark, she's a white girl, and it's a racial thing. And I'm like, I don't want to say you're fully wrong, but at the same time, like, it's not like women's basketball has had no good white players. Like, women's basketball is way different than men's in that regard. Like, there's a ton of great white players in women's basketball. So, like, I don't really fully think it's that. But it is crazy. It's crazy that Caitlin Clark has just like thrown everybody into a tizzy. It's like you just mentioned the name Caitlin Clark to basketball fans, and it's
she draws opinions.
Oh my God! And how? I don't understand how. Like, what's the opinion? Like, it's crazy. How? Like, I don't understand how he couldn't just be like, she's great, but I think she'll tell you that she would rather have a national championship than all these individual accolades. Like, that's a fair way to say what he was trying to say. But then for him to just be like, she's not that great of a player because she hasn't won a championship is bananas.
It doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense, especially in college basketball where there's 1,000 fucking teams in Division I, dude. There's only one chance. Like, that's, you know how many great players have never won a championship in college basketball? You only get a certain window to do it. It's crazy. It was crazy, but we already knew that from Jay Will, so he's only an honorable mention this week. Quick break to talk about our friends at DraftKings. We're excited to announce our partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings will be our one-stop shop for all things betting. This week, new customers who deposit $5 or more can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 on any sport. What's a no-sweat bet? It's just like getting an offensive board. Miss your first shot, you get another chance to score with a bonus bet back. You can also follow what all of your favorite Barstool personalities are betting on by joining the Barstool betting group in the social section of the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code Titus. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 if your first bet loses, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code Titus. The crown is yours. March Madness is around the corner. You're going to be gambling on college basketball like crazy. You know you are. Get the DraftKings Sportsbook app downloaded now. Get familiar with it so when March gets here, you'll be ready to rock. At number 5, we're going to start. Let's get going with the fraud power rankings. At number 5, whoever recruited Rick Pitino's team. I don't know who's responsible for this, but I, like a lot of this country, I was excited about Rick Pitino at St. John's. I was excited about the idea of St. John's being very relevant this year. I did not expect St. John's to compete for a national championship, but I did think that I think the analogy I used before the season was like there was potential for St. John's and Pitino to have like the Coach Prime effect where we in college basketball media are so starved for legendary coaches and so starved for storylines that St. John's was going to come out of the gate hot. They were going to be relevant all year. And we were going to be so excited to just talk about Rick Pitino, even at times when it wasn't relevant. You could turn on just random SEC games and we'd be talking about Rick Pitino. And I really thought that there was a chance that could happen. It didn't happen. St. John's is not that great. They're 14-12, just lost at home-ish. I think they played in the Islanders arena, which I don't know why they did that, but they played in like a sort of a loser leaves town match, not really, to Seton Hall. I think Seton Hall's in, and St. John's is not, but it felt that way, that it was like a must-win game for St. John's. They lose at home. They're not making the tournament this year. And Rick Pitino, in this post-game press conference, just went on an all-time tirade, saying this is the most unenjoyable experience of my lifetime. That was the quote card that got made up, which is fantastic, just to picture Rick Pitino saying this is the most unenjoyable experience of my lifetime. Joel Soriano's slow laterally. He's not fast on the court, Pitino. He said that. He said Ledlam is slow laterally. Sean Conaway slow laterally. Brady Dunlap is physically weak. Drisa is slow laterally. He's just calling out players by name. Another direct quote, we kind of lost this season with the way we recruited, he said. We recruited the antithesis of the way I coach. It is a good group. They try hard, but they're just not tough. It's not the job. It's not the job. You could be at Missouri and recruit slow players. Believe me, it's not St. John's. we had to put together a team at the last second. We will never, ever do that again. So shame on whoever did this to Rick Pitino, whoever was responsible for putting this roster together. I don't know how college basketball works, but the GM of the GM of St. John's that went out and got all these guys, fuck you for doing this. That's not fair to Rick, dude. Because we should have had a more relevant St. John's team, and we did not. But I did love the rant from Pitino, and
we're all trying to find the guy that did this.
We're all trying to find the guy who did this. I will say year one is hard, and the transfer portal, you want to pretend like you can turn teams around. Year one for every coach is difficult. Now the difference with coaches now is because of the transfer portal, the expectations in year one are a little more heightened. Whereas, like in most cases, if you're a year one coach and you're stepping in, especially in a situation where the coach was fired, because sometimes you're taking over a program where a coach had a great run and then you just retired or took a different job or something. Maybe year one's not as dicey, but if you're taking over for a coach that was fired, the understanding is that he was fired because the program's in a bad spot. So more often than not, we've been patient in the past with year one, but because of the transfer portal and NIL, I think the new expectation with coaches in year one, the bar has been raised that you can just snap your finger and put together a contender. I don't think that's true. So I do feel for Pitino a little bit, but also it's like it was very confusing that he was like lashing out at himself. I guess he kind of was just mad at himself publicly, but also throwing his players under the bus. I saw Quinn Slasinski of West Virginia, who played for Pitino at Iona. He did a after his game, he was asked about Pitino, like what was it like playing for Pitino? Did he ever throw you under the bus? All that sort of thing. And his quote was, "I didn't box out in practice," and he looked at me and said, "I don't know if I can say this out of love." This was Slasinski said, "Out of love, he said he will chop me up in 7 pieces and send me back to Detroit or Houston or wherever the bleep I'm from."
Jesus. I mean, I guess that makes sense from Pitino, though, that he is a hard-nosed coach.
Yeah. You know what's crazy, though, is like a lot of guys want that. A lot of guys still want that. And as I get older and become more like my father and say, like, kids these days don't get it, I still do think there are a ton of kids that love that. There are guys that want a coach that's like that. I mean, Dan Hurley's a great example as well, that just like he's a fucking psychopath too, but like players respond to that and they want to be coached. So I don't have a problem with that. And Izzo's Izzo got into hot water recently in the past couple years where like he would grab players by their jerseys and, you know, get technically physical with them, and then we'd all like break down the film and say like, was that crossing a line and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't have a problem with any of this. I don't have a problem with Pitino throwing his players under the bus. If his players do, like that's the thing is like I'm sure in this offseason all these St. John's guys are going to leave, and then everyone's going to say, see, Pitino's an asshole and he's losing his team. But that's exactly what he wants. That's the whole point. He's going on this tirade because he's like, these guys fucking suck, dude. I need better players. So I don't know. The coddling of players sometimes it's a weird time because I don't necessarily think you should always throw your players under the bus, but I also don't think that like by definition college basketball players deserve to not be called out publicly by their coaches if their coaches think they're not doing a great job. I don't know. I don't have a problem with it if Pitino feels like these guys aren't playing well enough and this is going to light a fire under their ass. Sure, go for it. But yeah, St. John's is disappointing this year. It's a bummer that they're 14-12. Not a bad year. It's not a complete disaster, and that program hasn't been awesome, obviously, which is why they just fired their coach. But I expected them to be a little bit better, and they're not, and that sucks. Moving on, number 4 on the fraud power rankings, handshake lines. So I need help understanding this, TJ. We talked about it on Mostly Sports briefly, but I want to talk about it a little bit more here. So Texas A&M Commerce and Incarnate Word, one of the great rivalries in college basketball, I must say.
Of course.
They play each other. The game is over. They're going through a handshake line, as every college basketball game does, and a fight breaks out. Now, this isn't completely unprecedented. There have been dust-ups in the past. One might remember an incident between, I believe it was Michigan and Wisconsin. I believe it was the head coach of Michigan. Yeah, it was Michigan. It was Juwan Howard. He struck him in. He struck him right in the face in the post-game handshake line against Wisconsin. But yeah, this sort of thing happens. My confusion, TJ, and I need help from you because I think we're technically different generations, right?
Yeah, I'm 27.
Yeah. So we might have a different perspective on this. So I thought the old man take out of this I was surprised. I'll put it this way. I was surprised to see that the crusty old man take from the college basketball media world seems to be that we should get rid of handshake lines. Now, I would have assumed that the old man take was we need more handshake lines, and that the young person, the young sports fan would be like, why do we do this dumb shit after games? What's the point of shaking hands?
Yeah.
It seems to have gone the other way. Is that surprising to you?
I never really understood. Like, I get it in like youth sports, but you don't shake hands in like high school. Do you shake hands in high school basketball or? Like,
we did, yeah. I know we did.
Why is it that it's just a basketball thing and a little league baseball thing? You don't shake hands in high school baseball. I don't really understand who makes the call on what sports deserve handshakes afterwards and what doesn't. Like, I think maybe my high school football might have had like a high five line or something like that, but it just seems like when you're in high octane or like high intensity atmospheres, like the Texas A&M Commerce Incarnate Word rivalry, that you're asking for people to like get in fights by making them like get up close to each other afterwards. I don't understand what this benefits or what this is supposed to display to anybody, where it's like, look, see, like they're friends. They're actually all aligned. I think my take on it is just let them fight during the game and play hockey if you want to put them up against each other like that. Let them fight.
The game should not be over till both teams get through the handshake lines and then to their locker room. Yeah. And like if you win the fight, you actually get like 5 points added to the score or something.
Yeah.
For every knockout, you get 2 points. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like, it does seem like really stupid, but then I see something like this, and my instinct is like, again, we need more handshakes. Like, the fact that, like, when you say, like, what's the point of the handshake line, I think this, to me, this is the way I see it, I think this demonstrates why we do need handshake lines. Is because, like, if you can't just, like, walk through a line and then go, like, fume in the locker room. Like, if you're mad about the loss, just go lose your mind in the locker room or, like, step in. If you can't even make it through one handshake line without throwing punches, maybe we do need the handshake lines until you guys can prove that we don't. I don't know. It is bizarre, though. I just would have assumed that, like, all the old men would have. I thought, don't do away with handshake lines. We got to keep them. And I thought me having that opinion would make me an old person. But, like, I saw, like, so many. Like, Bill Raftery was arguing we got to get rid of handshake lines. And that threw me for a loop. I don't know. It was confusing. Because I thought sportsmanship was like, I thought the older you get, the more you appreciate sportsmanship. The more you're like, the more you watch like a guy help up an opponent when he falls to the ground, and you're like, that's what it's all about right there. That's why I watch sports. But yeah, I don't know. I hate that. It feels like far too often we argue about the off quarter, like the dumb shit in college basketball. Like I don't court storming and handshake lines and all that sort of thing. I don't know. Do it or not. Like I don't really care. I don't think there is a blanket. I think you're right. Like I think like maybe it shouldn't be mandatory. Maybe you should shake hands if you want.
Yeah,
not
or
if
like,
you don't or something. I don't know.
Have like a powwow, not like a line. Like if you want to, because they force you into the line.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like like an NFL game. Some people take pictures, some people run to the locker room.
Right. Just like let it kind of happen however it wants, or at least like, or maybe there needs to be a cooling off period. Like the game's over, go straight to the locker room, and then we'll shake hands like 10 minutes after the game.
Yeah. Come back out in street.
Back out in street clothes, and let's all grab dinner too while we're here. Let's just like break bread, talk about it, display some sportsmanship, and move on. Speaking of post-game tirades, number 3 on the power rankings is the idea of Midwest nice. The idea of Midwesterners being nice and Middle America being full of salt of the earth people because Creighton beats Uconn like a drum in Omaha. Uconn fought back a little bit, made it semi-interesting in the second half, but Creighton was in control most of the game, hitting everything. Creighton was lights out. This happens. I don't know how Creighton does this. I actually do know how they do it. They Greg McDermott's a hell of a basketball coach and knows how to coach offense, and they get red hot, and that's how it happens. But I don't know. Back to the turn of phrase. I don't know how it happens that Creighton every single year just goes bananas against the top dog in the Big East. They used to do this to Villanova all the time. When Jay Wright and Villanova were it in the Big East, Creighton was like always thought of as like good enough to compete with Villanova. I think they did win the league one year, but like they were always like good enough to give Villanova a fight in terms of the Big East standings, but they weren't going to win the league. But then when they would play Villanova, it felt like one time a year when they would play Villanova, the Ethan Wragge game is the most notable example of this. When he, for those of you listening that don't know what I'm talking about, you youngsters, go Google that. Gus Johnson on the call, one of the greatest random ass regular season basketball games I've ever seen in my life. But Creighton has a history of doing this where they just like, oh, you think you're a good team? You think you're the bad boy of the Big East? Watch this. We're gonna make everything against you tonight. And it used to be Villanova. And now they're doing it to UConn. So, like, I wasn't, like, stunned that this happened, even though the number one team in the country getting blown out like that is definitely surprising. But Creighton, like, has a track record of doing this somehow. But anyway, they do this to UConn, and Dan Hurley on the walk out through the tunnel yells, "I will knock you out." And, like, these videos are circulating of Dan Hurley saying, "I'll knock you out," to the pointing at Creighton fans and saying, "I'll knock you out." But then I see one of the clips, there was a Creighton fan yelling the most obscene thing I have ever heard in my life at Dan Hurley, which triggered the whole thing, I believe. I don't know. I'm just connecting some dots. But I saw a different angle where you can clear as day hear a Creighton fan yell, "Welcome to Omaha." And, yeah.
Cody, censor that.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I saw that angle, I was like, well, shit, no wonder he went crazy. No, that was very, very funny. I don't love that Dan Hurley tweeted out the shame thing. Did you see this, TJ? He tweeted like a video of his head on the Game of Thrones. Yes. He's doing the shame walk, and he's like, kind of laughing at himself. I wish he didn't do that. But I don't really. It doesn't really matter. But I think like. So people started texting me after this, and they were like, does Dan Hurley suck, or is he cool? And I'm going to say the same thing about him that I said about Jim Harbaugh all year when Big Cat was trying to argue that Jim Harbaugh was a cool football coach. And I was like, Jim Harbaugh is not a cool football coach. He's a goober. In fact, I would say like most football coaches, almost every football coach is not cool. I think like if there's something about the profession, it's like you're just not. Even the cool football coaches aren't even really that cool. Yeah. I think the reason that Dan thought Jim Harbaugh was cool is because Jim Harbaugh was winning, and Jim Harbaugh won the national championship this year. And as it turns out, winning is very cool. So I use that as an example to say Dan Hurley loses at Creighton, and I got a handful of people texting me like, you see this video, dude? Does this guy suck? Does he actually suck? Like, is he kind of a baby? And it made me laugh because that's exactly how everybody felt about Dan Hurley before he won a national championship last year. Was like when he was at Uconn up until last year, and even throughout last year, but like for long stretches of his career, he's just been a loud buffoon. But then he won a national championship, and suddenly it was like, oh, this guy's awesome. This guy's the best coach in college basketball, and I love how fiery he is, and his players rallied behind him. And this year it's been more of the same. Like he's kind of toned it down a little bit, like in terms of throughout the flow of the actual game, because I think the pressure has subsided a little bit by winning a national championship. He's not as crazy on the sideline. He's still crazy. He's still fired up. He's still, we still get the timeout huddle camera, and he's mic'd up and all that, and he's going a little crazy, but it's not quite as intense as it used to be. But now he loses in an embarrassing fashion, and suddenly it feels like he's a buffoon again. And I don't know where I stand on it because like it does. I do think that coaches should just win every game and you don't have these problems. I think if you just win every single time, we don't have to question whether you suck or not. But yeah, like I do kind of wish that Dan Hurley didn't chirp back at the. I will be completely honest. I don't know if I love this about myself, but when I saw him chirping back at the Creighton fans, I did not think it was cool. I thought it was kind of lame that he was obviously demonstrating that the Creighton fans were getting to him.
Yeah.
I thought that was my takeaway. I was like, I don't care that no part of me was like, you got to carry yourself to a higher standard. It was more that like, by engaging with this, you are losing the fight. But yeah, I just find it interesting because like if Creighton if UConn had won that game and Dan Hurley was walking off and was like, I'll fuck you up to the Creighton fans, I think everyone would have been like, what a badass, dude.
Yeah.
What a badass.
I think it's also a little bit performative. Like, he obviously knows that there's going to be cameras on him in 2024 walking off the court.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, but it's performative in the wrong way. Like, if he, like you said, if he won and he walks off and says that, it's like, oh, shit, badass. Like, he should know that, and I think he does know this. I don't know why he would go against this, that, like, when you lose in that situation, you, like, shut the fuck up, you get off the court, and then the next time you come back to Creighton, you beat them by 30, and then you hang your nuts,
and then you wave at and then you wave at
the
them.
video, too, like, wait till after you beat Nova on Saturday, because I think they might, like, slap Nova around. Like, if they play the way UConn, like, generally, I feel like a team like UConn comes off a loss, like Purdue is probably going to against Rutgers as this is, like, being released. Like, beat the shit out of Nova on Saturday and then drop a video that's like, see, like, we had it the whole time.
Right. I agree with that. But, you know, I think UConn fans will argue that if his players saw that and it fires them up and you know, UConn gets back to playing championship level basketball, then maybe it was all worth it and maybe that's why he does it. And I don't know, but that's the whole point is that it ultimately boils down to winning. Winning. If you win, if you're winning basketball games, it's an effective tactic. And as much as like the outside world might not like it, you're always going to be able to defend your behavior because you're like, yeah, if it gets my guys going and it leads to wins, we're good. But yeah, if you lose and you do it, I think Brandon said that example. It's like Dan Hurley and Bobby Hurley are the great example. Like, they're kind of the same demeanor, and Dan Hurley is much more palatable than Bobby Hurley because Dan Hurley wins basketball games.
Winning.
UConn needed this, by the way. I think this was a good thing for UConn. I think when UConn beat the snot out of Marquette, waking up on Sunday and then seeing like the media machine go into effect on Monday of that being a talking point of like, is this UConn team better than last year's? First of all, I think it's way too early to be having those conversations. Two, I don't think it's close. Like, I think last year's team is way better than this year's team. Their ceiling is so much higher. I just felt like Jordan Hawkins and Andre Jackson were two guys that are irreplaceable for them. And that's not to say that the guys they have now aren't good, but the talent level on last year's team, I think, was considerably better than this year's. You know, maybe that's too strong a language. Like, I don't mean to shit on this year's team that much, but you know, I sort of understand why people want to make the comparisons, because last year's team was a 4 seed and struggled throughout January. This year's team has been number 1 for most of the season or long chunks of the season. Is almost certainly going to be a 1 seed in the tournament. Looks every bit the part of a national championship contender, if not favorite. And you know, I understand the reason behind wanting to make the comparisons. I think it's way too early. I think you have these comparisons like if UConn makes the Final Four and we're going into Final Four week, I think that's when we pump out the articles and we're like, is this year's team better than last year's? But anyway, I think this was a good dose of humble pie, I guess, for UConn, which I think like more of the fan base needed it than the players. But I think they needed a reset. I think I do really like this UConn team. I think they should be the favorites to win the national championship still. I think Klingon is incredible and Newton and on down the line. I mean, the fact that like I don't personally believe that they have any one player that's like a National Player of the Year caliber player. And yet they have 4 or 5 guys that are insanely good and would start on just about any team in the country is a great thing, because they're not relying on one guy. And Tristan Newton is probably the guy, but Donovan Clingan might be the guy, and Cam Spencer some nights is the guy, and Caravan will look like the guy, and Stephon Castle is probably the most individually talented guy that they have. I don't know. It's a great problem to have. They're loaded with talent, and it's a very balanced approach, and I love everything about this Uconn team. I just think that getting a little over your skis with the talk of like, are they better than last year's team? I didn't love that was happening, so I think that this might actually be a good thing, and I think you can recalibrate the expectation and get the hunger back. And I do think Dan Hurley, I think he said that in his post game, that it's like hard to motivate guys in the huddle when we've won 1,000 games in a row and we're the number 1 team in the country, and it's hard to keep that fire. And so hopefully this rejuvenates that fire for them, because I do think that Uconn is the best team in the country, but I also think that they were prematurely crowned just because they beat Marquette at home.
Yep.
And you don't want to do that. You don't want to crown yourself in February. That's not the time to do that. So, ever wish you could call a foul on your wireless carrier for their hidden fees? Then it's time to switch to Visible. Switch to Visible, the wireless company with nothing to hide, and get one-line wireless with unlimited 5G data powered by Verizon. Just $25 a month. Every month, taxes and fees are included. One-line wireless. I'm going to say this again. $25 a month, and the taxes and fees are included. There are no hidden fees. There are no gotchas. Visible is the wireless company with nothing to hide. Unlimited 5G data powered by Verizon. Bench wireless with hidden fees and switch to Visible. Rate with service on the Visible plan. For additional terms and network management practices, see visible.com. Go switch to Visible now. Get rid of those hidden fees. Know what you're going to be paying for your service every single month. $25 a month. It's all it is. One-line wireless. Bingo, bango, bongo, visible.com. Go do it now. Number 2, John Calipari. The last, it hasn't even been a week. The last 2 games from John Calipari is the John Calipari experience in a nutshell. And it is like, you can just point to these 2 games and his demeanor in both these games as to why Kentucky fans are so over his bullshit, and why, like, I'm not a Kentucky fan, and I was pointing and laughing at Cal's bullshit almost from the jump when he got to Kentucky, and this has been hilarious to me the entire time, how John Calipari operates and tries to manipulate the media and all that sort of thing. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, Kentucky goes to Auburn, wins big, looks great from start to finish, gets out to a big lead, keeps it, plays defense to a certain extent. Auburn's a great defensive team. They do not lose at home, and Kentucky was they looked from start to finish like they were a tier above Auburn, and they were Auburn was a team that was happy to be there. Kentucky was a legitimate team. That's what it looked like all night. And so Cal comes into the post-game press conference, and he's peacocking, and he's sticking his chest out, and he's saying, all of you that want to blame the players, don't do that. Put the blame on me. If you ever have problems, because Kentucky had lost 3 in a row, as we remember, at home not too long ago. It was the first time in the history of Rupp Arena that has happened. This Kentucky season has been up and down, to say the least, and it's a big season for the trajectory of the program. So Kentucky fans are getting a little anxious about, if we're going to flip that switch, now would be a good time to start flipping it, John. They beat the shit out of Auburn. It looks like the switch has been flipped. It looks like, all right, here we go. All the talent's coming together. And Cal knows this, so he goes into the post-game press conference. He's sticking his chest out, and he's like, all of you that want to criticize what this program is, I'm asking that you put the blame on me. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, John, there's literally nobody on planet Earth that's putting the blame on anybody but you. It's always been you. Why are you saying this? And the reason he's saying this is because he's trying to, like, gaslight us into thinking that, like, was I attacking Justin Edwards? I didn't even realize. I thought all those times when I was saying John Calipari's fucking this season up, that I was saying John Calipari's fucking this season up. But maybe I was saying Justin Edwards is not great and DJ Wagner's been disappointing. I didn't realize that. Just a classic Cal move to come to the post-game press conference and say that. But again, when you're winning, you can get away with this sort of thing, and when you're losing, it looks like whatever, you know. So like they beat Auburn, and you're like, you just roll your eyes and you're like, damn it, that's just Cal being Cal, and that's who this man is he tries to play the media like a fiddle and say, put all the blame on me. At a time when obviously no one's going to blame anybody because Kentucky basketball is playing well, and they're finally looking like the team we were hoping they would be at the start of the season. And then last night, they lose to LSU, and they blow a 15-point lead in the second half. And they do so. It was pretty funny because Dillingham scores to the what would have been the game-winning shot. And I saw that I don't want to call it a study. That's way too elaborate for what it was. But someone like went back and noticed that like, Kentucky is like 2 for 29 in the last 31 game-winning shots or game-tying shots. Like Kentucky misses every shot down the stretch in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever it is. And now they're finally in a position where they're down 1. Rob Dillingham hits a big shot with 12 seconds left. And then immediately loses track of his guy. LSU scores at the buzzer on a scramble, and that's how Kentucky loses the game. And John Calipari, who just last game said, put all the blame on me. If things are going south, do not blame any of my players. There might be a time in the future in our next game against LSU where Rob Dillingham loses sight of his guy and is just standing at the three-point line guarding nobody as the guy he's supposed to be guarding. Gets an offensive rebound and tips it in for the win. But do not rip on him. Please direct all your hatred towards me. And then the LSU game happens. John Calipari goes in the post-game press conference, answers 3 questions, leaves, gets the hell out of there, cuts the whole press conference short, and says, I got to get back because we're playing Alabama on Saturday, and it's an early tip at 4 p.m. I don't know how. I don't know how he thinks he's getting away with this. Kentucky fans are so sick of Cal, and it warms my heart because I saw through this bullshit a long time ago, and I don't think Cal is as bad of a coach as it seems like he is when things go bad, but this has been Cal the entire time he's been at Kentucky, and not to keep being a broken record and beating a dead horse here, but it really truly is the difference between winning and losing. Is like when you're winning, that shit is charming, and Cal trying to butter himself up to the media and do all that stuff is all fun. And when you have a season like this where Kentucky this is a pivotal season for the trajectory of the program, and I don't know how, like if Kentucky loses in the first or second, if they don't make it out of the first weekend, and it doesn't seem like they're going to, they're not going to fire Cal. They can't fire Cal. They owe him $1 trillion, and they'd have to kill him because he's on a lifetime contract. But he's almost completely lost the fan base, and I don't know how he gets him back. This is such a massive season for him, and for him to be behaving this way where he's still trying to be the all shucks like media guy and like he's just going back to the well with the same shit at a time when Kentucky fans just want to know why is Antonio Reeves on the bench when he's the guy that's scoring all the points for us, and why are all of our 7-footers soft, and why did we fight so hard to get Big Z eligible, and now he's playing 2 minutes and he's like not that good, but maybe he is good. I don't know. We've seen it in flashes, but like what was the plan with him, and like what is this roster anyway, and why are all 4 of these guards kind of redundant, and how have we not fixed that yet? And like why did Justin Edwards and DJ Wagner come into the season looking like they would compete against each other to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft, and now it feels like neither one of them should really even be starting? What the hell is going on with all this? Like it's a confounding Kentucky season, and yet I will never be able to quit them because as much as like the problem with the game last night was, yeah, they suck at defense, but like when they don't suck at defense, they look good at defense. That's Kentucky. Kentucky can flip the switch. They just like can't keep the switch flipped. They can flip it, but they can't keep it there. And you got to keep it there. Kentucky's won more than 2 straight games, so 3 or more. That's how I should have said that. The last time they won their 3rd or more game in a row was January 9th. They haven't put more than a 2-game win streak together since January 9th. And you're going to have to win more than 2 games to do much of anything in the NCAA tournament, I think. I think 2 games get you to the Sweet 16, and then you're toast after that. So there's no reason for me to believe in Kentucky anymore. And yet you have 4 guards that can create their own offense, and that's you're always going to just keep going back to that. But yeah, I'm getting to a point where the John Calipari experience is just it's maddening. It's absolutely maddening trying to make sense of what this guy is thinking with his rotations, what this guy is thinking with he thinks he's got the media in the palm of his hand, and maybe he does, but the messaging, maybe he has the media, but the fans that are receiving the media's messaging can see right through the bullshit now, and the whole charade is just not working anymore. And this is massive, man. If John Calipari, I guess if he makes the Sweet 16, that's I don't know. I don't even know what the goal is now, because I said coming into the year that this is a big year and that Cal has to show that he still got it with this roster and not squander this opportunity and all that. But I don't even know what that means anymore. They're not going to win the SEC. They could win the SEC tournament, but they're not winning the regular season. So what does that mean in the NCAA tournament? If they make the Sweet 16, am I going to step back and be like, all right, that was fine. Good job, Cal. You did it. I don't know that I am. I feel like this is an Elite 8 team or better. But yeah, they're so frustrating. Because that LSU game, the end of the first half is why don't you just guard like this all the time? Why don't you? I don't know. It's maddening. I need a swig of water. Then we're gonna get to number 1. Number 1, fraud power rankings this week. The Zach-Edey Defensive Player of the Year campaign. I want to be careful with how I talk about this, because maybe I don't need to be careful, actually. Fuck it, I don't need to be careful. I think Zach Edey's a great player. I do. I think Zach Edey is deserving of winning his National Player of the Year award that he's going to win this year. He was certainly deserving of winning it last year, and I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. And no part of me is even worried about the precedent or that's not the right word. I'm not worried about the idea that we're going to look back in 50 years and be like, we had one guy in the last 50 years win 2 National Players of the Year, and it was Zach Edey. And what does that mean for college basketball, that was the only guy that could win 2 National Players? I'm not even worried about that. I think Zach Edey, his National Player of the Year awards, and I think his standing in college basketball will age just fine. And I feel that way even if Purdue loses in the second round this year. I think Zach Edey's his dominance speaks for itself, and he's a great college basketball player. Great college basketball player. You cannot. Every single Purdue game goes through Zach Edey on both ends of the floor, and yeah. So that's all the nice things. And the butt is coming, obviously. But I just wanted to say all that to say I'm not a Zach Edey hater. I'm really not. But this idea that Zach Edey is one of the best defenders in college basketball is making my brain it's making my brain numb. I feel like I'm watching something, a completely different sport than what everybody else is watching. And I dropped this on Mostly Sports. Brandon and I were talking about Zach Edey a month ago, and I mentioned that defensively he's not great, and teams have figured that out, and they try to attack him on offense. That's the strategies. You go after Zach Edey. And Purdue fans went fucking ballistic. Holy shit. I have never gotten backlash really saying anything in my entire career as saying Zach Edey can't guard. And they wanted to point to the fact that nobody posts Zach Edey up. And this is true. And Zach Edey is in that regard, I guess I'll walk it back a little bit and say Zach Edey is very, very good at standing underneath the basket. And if you are a big man and you try to make a post move over him, he will, if not block the shot, he will alter the shot. And big guys do not want to challenge him. And all of this stuff is true. That is one aspect of playing defense. Zach Edey in space cannot move his feet to save his life. It is very much a problem. I understand that Purdue runs the drop coverage on the ball screens. Drop coverage does not mean literally just like retreat back to the rim because you can't do anything else. He can't move his feet. And this was on full display against Ohio State. Like every time Ohio State every time they got Zach-Edey in space, they're licking their lips, and Roddy Gale and Bruce Thornton and the rest of them are like, holy shit, this is a dream come true. And all I'm saying, and all I was saying from the start, is that if you are the best defender in college basketball, there can never, under any circumstance, ever be a situation where an offense has you one-on-one and says, hell yeah, let's go, and they're licking their lips. That can't happen. It just can't happen. You can't be the best defender in college basketball and be the guy that is being attacked on the other end. And I get it. Purdue is winning a ton of games, and Purdue will go to the Final Four. I've said it all year. I will continue to say that Purdue is going to go to the Final Four. I have not even seen the bracket. When it comes out, I will put Purdue in the Final Four at the very least. They are going to have a successful NCAA tournament this year, and Zach-Edey will win National Player of the Year. So, yeah, a lot of this stuff is easier said than done. But this idea that Purdue fans were, like, chirping back at me after I mentioned on Mostly Sports that, like, Zach-Edey is – like, I don't think he has any prayer in the NBA. He's got no prayer at all. Like, the perimeter players are going to run circles around him. He can't keep anybody in front of him. And that's – like, I don't say that to attack the kid. It's just the reality. I just thought this was something we all saw. We all see it when we watch. I mean, this is why Fairleigh Dickinson was beating Purdue. Is like we kept screaming they're too small. Like they're running around, and they're making Edey do things he's not comfortable doing. He can't just camp out in the paint all day. So anyway, Ohio State having that happen. You know, having these conversations the last few weeks, and then having Ohio State be a team that got to expose that, and then on the other end, like, you know, Zed Key just stripping the ball from Zach-Edey over and over and over again, and Edey having 6 turnovers. That was icing on the cake. That was very delightful for me. But we have to put to rest this idea that Zach-Edey is worthy of Defensive Player of the Year. It's just not. He's not. Jamal Shead is going to win the award. He should win the award. Even if you want to give it to a big guy, Janai Broom is a better big man defender than Zach-Edey. I don't even like Ryan Kalkbrenner as much as most people like Ryan Kalkbrenner, and I think Ryan Kalkbrenner is a better defender than Zach-Edey. I just think that, like, the idea of pointing to a guy being able to stand in the paint and alter shots is just an antiquated way of looking at a big man playing defense. And I think, like, when you compare, like, the big men in this sport who actually were fucking awesome at defense. Like, Anthony Davis is the prototype, the big man in college basketball who was maybe the best defender the last 25, however many number of years as a big man that we've seen in college basketball. You're coming off ball screens and you got Anthony Davis waiting on you. There wasn't a soul in college basketball that's like, fuck yes, I got AD matched up against me now. I'm gonna go right at him. Nobody was saying that. Are you crazy? That was insane. Same with Greg Oden. Like, nobody. He was a big man that was, you know, he was more of a traditional big man in the same vein as Edey. Like AD was could step out a little bit more and move his feet a little bit better. But Greg was the same sort of thing. Like, I don't know. It's baffling to me that we have to pretend like Zach-Edey's like a generational defensive player, because I've never seen it. And I say that as a guy who very much appreciates Zach-Edey and thinks he's a great player. So was that a hate and ass take? Did that sound too bad?
No, I don't think him being a defensive juggernaut is a take that many people should have if they watch him play. I'm with you in that, like, I think that his game is very not one-dimensional, but it's like, okay, he's tall, we get it, he's tall. Like, he does what he does, and he does it over and over and over again, and nobody can really seem to knock it off for more than one game in a row. But yeah, I'm with you. I think he's a foul merchant. He's a refs merchant. He's a under the hoop merchant. He's a rebound merchant. Yeah. He's a double merchant. There's plenty of merchandise.
He's a merchant of a lot of things. Yeah. But yeah,
he's a master of what he's a master of, and that's mainly being the big guy, being super big.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a rant on drop coverage, by the way, in college basketball at some point, because it's whatever. I don't want to do it now, but Edey guards ball screens by not guarding them, and I think Purdue fans have convinced themselves, they've like galaxy brained themselves into thinking that that's like because that's like how NBA teams can guard ball screens, but they have guys like a Rudy Gobert type can guard ball screens with drop coverage, because Rudy Gobert can, like, if a guy does pull on a jump shot, he can still contest the shot, and he's not like, when someone's coming off a ball screen, he's not like fully retreating and just like stumbling over his feet as he's running backwards like Eddy does. And then Eddy does that, and you have like Purdue people that are like, dude, we're running drop coverage. Like, why don't you read up on drop coverage, dude? Do you not know what drop coverage is? It's called drop fucking coverage. And I'm gonna go play pickup basketball, and just like, my guy sets a screen, I'm gonna do fucking nothing. I'm just gonna stand there and then just yell drop coverage. And I guess I'm playing Zach Edey defense, and that's how it's going to be. I mean, Zach Edey tries. I will say that, like, and this is an important point, and I do mean this. A lot of big guys in college basketball, there is an effort issue, and it can be maddening watching big guys who aren't great defensively because they just don't try. And he does not have that problem. I do think he tries. I mean, there were possessions against Ohio State where he was like, all right, I'm going to step out and try to guard this guy, and I'm going to get after it, and I'm going to get down in a stance. The problem is that he gets down in a stance, and then he can't move, and he just like squats down, and it's like he's stuck. It looks like me getting out of bed in the morning where my back locks up, and he just kind of like, I guess I'm stuck here, and then the guy just like drives right by him. And I don't know, this idea that there was ever anybody, I don't know, he's on like the defensive player of the year watch list, TJ, Zach Edey. And I was like, he's not even the best defender on his own team.
No,
like this is insane. But yeah, I don't get it. He averages like a little over 2 blocks a game, which is like for 7'4", and like that's what you like. I don't know. He doesn't. He gets 0 steals. He can't guard. He can't keep a shadow in front of him if he steps outside of the paint. I don't know. I'm glad the Buckeyes finally exposed this, because it's something I've if you're going to make the argument that Zach Edey is a good basketball player, you can't tell me that he's the best defender in college basketball, because then you lose. We have to be credible. Both sides have to be credible. If you're arguing Zach Edey, I just want to see a fair fight from both sides. And, I'll defend the people that say Zach Edey sucks and he's just tall, but then I also need to push back on the Purdue fans that are like, he's the best. Not only is he the best offensive player in college basketball, he's also the best defensive player. Wrong. You're insane. All right, that's the fraud power rankings. Quick break to talk about Rhoback Activewear. You guys all know how much we love Rhoback. Best fit, best feel. We can't go anywhere without seeing someone wearing a Rhoback Performance hoodie. Simply put, these are so soft, you will not be able to take them off. They also pair great with the Rhoback Performance joggers. They are made to move in and are incredibly comfortable. Some would say the best duo on the market, and I would not disagree. They also just restocked their new Performance crew necks, and when I say they are soft, I mean it. Made with their Butterflex fabric, it is soft to the skin with stretch that allows you to move. It's also, dare I say, it's quarter zip season again here in the spring. If you're a golfer, it's time to get those quarter zips back out. It's almost golf season. It's the weather's here in the Midwest, at least, it's getting a little warmer, but it's not too crazy. You don't want to go short sleeve. Get yourself a Rhoback quarter zip and get back out on the course, dude, because the spring is going to be here before you know it. Check out Rhoback and use code Titus on Rhoback.com for 20% off your first purchase. That's RHOBACK.com. 20% off all performance hoodies, crew necks, joggers, and more with code Titus, Rhoback.com. What else before we go? NBA All-Star Weekend happened. Another thing that nobody wants to hear me talk about now, 4 days after the fact, but whatever. It was in Indy, so I want to talk about it. My only All-Star thing is that the All-Star game was terrible and boring and whatever. I don't really care. Like I'm not even that super nostalgic about the All-Star game. I'm more, every time I watch the All-Star game and it's boring, I'm more annoyed about the wasted. I'm less annoyed about like, damn, this used to mean something to me when I was growing up, and I'm more annoyed that it's like I could have just watched a movie for these last couple hours. I should have just like thrown a movie on. Why did I just do that with my time? That's really more the annoyance. But everybody this week has been throwing out their fixes for the All-Star game, and how do How do you make it as good as it used to be, man? It used to be so good. Remember when Kobe was playing in it? Oh, my God, it was so good. Remember MJ? You remember that guy? Holy shit, dude. He would never have let this happen. And I think there is no fix. I think I appreciate everybody's effort at trying to fix the All-Star game. My opinion on the matter is you cannot fix the All-Star game and make it worth watching until the players care enough to give effort, and it's really that simple. And that's a lesson that we learned with the in-season tournament this year, which felt like a joke when they announced it. The in-season tournament starts. You could very much feel that the players gave a fuck, and as it turns out, that's all we all cared about. Is like if we're turning on the television and the athletes that we're watching care, and you can feel that when you're watching the game, whatever game it is, whether it's an exhibition game or whether it's Game 7 of the finals. We're invested. We're in. We'll watch that. And that's really it. Like, so I guess like if you want to incentivize the players by paying them to play in the All-Star game and like the winners get a certain amount of money, I guess like whatever. But like I think it has to be a cultural shift of like, you know, as much as this has always been an exhibition game and guys haven't really cared that much. I don't think it should be controversial to say that like, yeah, the Kobe Bryant era and the Michael Jordan era and all these different eras obviously cared more than whatever this era is, which is, I guess, probably the LeBron Steph era. They cared more about putting on a show in the All-Star game than these guys do. And until these guys care, I don't think you can really fix it. I don't think you can really say, like, we should go back to drafting teams or we should split it up and we should play 3-on-3 or we should do the same with the dunk contest, like all of it. Like you can't there's no format that's going to work unless the players buy in. And unfortunately, it just feels like the players aren't particularly close to buying in. So that's just the reality of it. And I think that's what 90% of the NBA's problems boil down to for me. And like most of my gripes with the NBA just boil down to like the perception and or the reality that the players don't care. And I think that like if the NBA could fix that, that's really it. I mean, that's solved for me. I would kind of never complain about it if I can get to a point where I turn on every single NBA game and I don't have to question whatsoever whether the players care tonight. I'll never say anything bad about the NBA again. But like that's ultimately what all their problems boil down to. Is in the case of the All-Star game, it's a reality. In the case of some of these regular season games, it's somewhere in between perception and reality. But like that should never be. In my opinion, in any sport at any level, if you're a fan of the sport or you're trying to watch, you're a consumer, you just want to be entertained, that is the baseline. That has to be the foundation of every single game that you're watching. Is like, I want to work under the assumption that the players care, and if they don't care, no matter what you do, no matter how many bells and whistles or putting a 4-point line or anything else, if I feel as a viewer like the athletes that I'm watching don't particularly care that much, whether they win or lose, there's no saving it. So I just had that thought watching the All-Star game. I was like, I don't know how they're gonna. I scrap it, I guess. I don't, or just keep it, like keep it as it is. Like it's, but I something's got to give, and also maybe something doesn't have to give at all. Like maybe it's just like, yeah, next year we're gonna turn on the All-Star game. The final score will be 215-209. Nothing of consequence happens, and it's all stupid, and we all just keep it moving again because, as it turns out, this is all dumb. But, like, if you want to go back to the day, like, the only way to get it starts with the players. The players have to care, and given the circumstances of how much money they make and, like, they want to take care of their bodies and they'd rather be on vacation and all, there's a lot of valid reasons, but, like, you know, it just feels like they don't care right now, and as long as that's the case, no amount of like, we have to get the stars involved in the dunk contest and we have to change the skills competition. We have to, like, no amount of tweaks is going to fix the All-Star weekend unless the players themselves give a fuck.
Which they won't unless you put something real on the line.
Yeah.
Is the way I look at it. Like the MLB All-Star game doesn't do it anymore, but they used to have that be deciding of who gets home field advantage in the World Series, which I don't think is the right thing. Like I'm glad that that's not the stipulation anymore. The better team should have home field, but putting something tangible whether it's in season or a money amount, because
Right.
that worked for the in-season tournament. Like, they put money on the line, and those games were very exciting.
Right.
They have to put something on the line to get the players to care while they're, like, on their vacation week or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's not going to happen for the dunk contest, where they're going to give them, like, a extra point in a basketball. Like,
Yeah.
There's nothing that they could really offer that makes sense. That isn't, like, a unfair advantage.
Well, the thing with the basketball All-Star game, I think the reason people are disappointed is because yes, it's true. There's never been an All-Star game in the history of the league where the players have given 100%. But with basketball, the All-Star game has been so entertaining through the years because basketball is a sport where you can give a sliding scale of effort in terms of, you can play at 70% speed and it's still kind of entertaining, or you can dial it up and down at will. Whereas, say, like a football All-Star game, the problem the Pro Bowl ran into is that you can only play football at 100%. You cannot half-ass football. You cannot 70% football. And it felt like the Pro Bowl, like you have like the Sean Taylor lighting up the punter shit. Like, guys would get in positions where they want to kind of take it easy, but then you kind of can't because you don't know if the guy that's about to tackle you is taking it easy. And those negotiations, in open field would get a little dicey. And then it gets to a point where eventually the Pro Bowl was like, okay, we can't give 100% because that would be fucking insane if one of us like blew out our knee in this stupid All-Star game in Hawaii. So should we just give 0%? Yeah, let's give 0%. But then when you give 0% in football, it's just a farce and a complete mockery. And there's no way to make compelling football where you're giving like 75%. Basketball there is, and I think that was the frustration with this All-Star game. It's like, yeah, we all know that, like, never in the history of the All-Star game have these guys given 100%, but like, can you give us 70? 70 would be entertaining. 60 would be entertaining. You just gave us like 7. You just gave us like almost 0% effort. So I think that's where the frustration came from, and I think that, like, even baseball is the same way. Like, I don't think you can really. Baseball does feel like they're kind of not trying as hard, but like if you're stepping into the box, you can't just go up there and be like, you know what, I'm gonna give like a 60% swing on this one, because like you have an all-star pitcher that's throwing, and as a pitcher you can't be like, yeah, I can touch 100 with my fastball, but I'm gonna throw it 84. I'm just gonna throw it 84 and see what happens, because it's an all-star game. That guy will fucking smoke it out of the park and you look like an idiot. So like those guys still have to bring the effort a little bit, and I don't know. And I think that basketball should be, the way it's constructed, it should be a perfect all-star game because it's like the best pickup basketball game ever. And you'd like to think that there could be a very obvious level of effort given where it's like still entertaining, but these guys aren't killing themselves. And, that negotiation has gone out the window and the players have decided we don't care. What else? Shout out to Tommy Lloyd signing a contract extension at Arizona. The Buckeyes have already got one guy paid, so that's add him to the list. He's not coming to Ohio State, but you're welcome, Tommy. That I threw Tommy Lloyd's name out as a candidate, and then he immediately got a contract extension. So who else should I get paid? Let's see here. Who else do I don't know where I want to go with this. With this coaching search, TJ, it's driving me insane. I'm getting people are feeding me bad information, and I can tell it's bad information, and I still just believe it. I'm just getting like tips left and right, and I'm like, there's no fucking way that's true, but like, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I have no idea where we're gonna go with this thing, but I saw Tommy. I slowly was talking myself into the idea of Arizona being broke and Ohio State just like swinging for the fences for Tommy Lloyd. And I went home and I was like, yeah, dude, we could get Tommy Lloyd. Like, we have a ton of money, right? And like Arizona, didn't they just like falsify their books or something? And they had $40 million missing. And didn't I read about that somewhere? Yeah, we're going to get Tommy Lloyd signed an extension. Damn it. Never mind. That was pretty much how my like 6 hours went when that went down.
And it's gone.
And then lastly, I wanted to shout out Dairy Queen signing with Maryland. You see this? 5-star center named Derek Queen.
Oh, I thought you said Dairy Queen.
That's why I wanted to shout him out. Dairy Queen. What a name, right?
Yeah, Derek Queen.
Derek Queen is going to Maryland. Great name. Great name. Yeah, that's really it. I've never seen him play, but I want ice cream now.
Yeah, he should. That's like a layup NIL deal that they got to work out.
Yeah,
the Derek Queen Blizzard at Dairy
he's
Queen.
got to have. If he has any sort of PR sense about him or branding sense about him, he's got to have like a finger roll, like a scoop shot, right? Like he's got to have like the Dairy Queen scoop. But they're soft serve ice cream, right? So maybe that doesn't play. Dairy Queen is. What's the pun that we could use with Dairy Queen?
The milkman delivers.
Dairy Queen to Maryland. Shout out to him. Fun slate of college basketball this weekend. Houston is at Baylor. LJ Cryer back in Waco. This Houston team won a very disgusting game against Iowa State. I like Iowa State. I'm getting close to believing in Iowa State. I'm getting very, very close. And Iowa State fans are going to say, what are you holding out on? I'm going to say, I don't know. It's a gut thing. I want to believe in Iowa State. I think it's the offense. I mean, it's always the offense. It seems like that. Houston, it dawned on me watching Houston and Iowa State that Houston is their defense is the best in the country, and it's disgusting how they can just swallow teams alive, and they are very physical, and I know Fran on the call, Fran Fraschilla was hinting at the idea that Houston's fouling every time down the floor, and maybe they were, but like that's by design, and that is their culture, is that they just beat the shit out of you because they know the refs aren't going to call every foul. But what is going to happen is you're slowly going to get mentally weak because you keep looking at the refs over and over saying, please help us. But their defense is disgusting. It dawned on me, though, that the combination of LJ Cryer and Jamal Shed is like the Mendoza line of offensive talent from guards that I trust in March, which is to say that I can't tell if those guys are the very worst type of guys who I believe can make their own offense in March when they need to, when things go south and you have to give the ball to Cryer or Shed, they can make something happen. Are they, of the group of guys that I think that can do that, are they at the very bottom, or are they at the very top of the list of guys that like are really, really good players, can score in certain contexts, but I don't trust that like when things go south, you can just throw them the ball and say, please save us. And I'm still working on that part too. But I think they're like I think like Cryer's an incredible shooter. And Shed is his defensive instinct and his IQ are through the roof. I think he's going to get an NBA shot even though he's like 6 feet tall. But that's what worries me is the end of shot clock. A minute and a half left in the game. We need a bucket. It's a tie game. Are either one of those guys? Isolation basketball is not going to. You should not be playing isolation basketball for 40 minutes in March, but you do need a guy who can do it. I believe you need a guy who can do it in certain spots, and I think they might be, but I think they might not as well. And that's a non-answer. But that's where it dawned on me. I was like, I could see. I'm scared to take a side because they're going to fuck me either way. Jamal Shed and LJ Cryer. They're so good though. They're such a fun tandem to watch. So Houston at Baylor will be a fun one. Carolina at Virginia is a sneaky, awesome game this weekend. Must win for Virginia basketball. The South's oldest rivalry, as they say. More so in football, but Carolina at Virginia. Bama at Kentucky. Excited for Kentucky to win that one and get us back to believing in Kentucky basketball again. And and I come in on Monday and I'm like, I knew it. I knew these sons of bitches would do it. And Villanova at Uconn is another game that I'm looking forward to. As TJ said, it stands to reason that Uconn will beat the hell out of Villanova. But Villanova is just when you think you got Villanova figured out, they surprise you as well, good and bad.
UConn also did lose a bunch of games in a row last year, so maybe they're just planning on doing that again. Yeah,
and I don't think UConn. They're not a perfect basketball team, and this idea that UConn's just going to roll to another. I mean, last year it's so. I know the last year's team was a 4 seed, but like they didn't break a sweat in the NCAA tournament, and to be talking about this year's team like they're as good as last year's team when. they just won a national championship without breaking a sweat. Just feels a little disrespectful to me. So, the UConn, they're the best team in the country, but that doesn't mean they're perfect, and it doesn't mean they're above dropping a few in a row. So we'll see. But, yeah, I mean, obviously they're at home, and they're better than Villanova, so I expect them to win rather easily. So, anyway, I'll be watching those 4 along with a bunch of others. I encourage you to do the same, and I will see you.
I got one shot.
Fingers crossed. Go ahead.
Mark Titus, 1 year at Barstool Sports.
Oh, really? Wait, is that true?
February 21st of last year, we posted the video. Mark Titus coming to Barstool Sports.
Oh, no shit.
Congratulations.
Oh, wow, dude. I didn't realize that.
How does it feel?
I gotta go home and think about some things.
How many years have you aged in the last 1 year at Barstool Sports?
I've aged 5 years. Yeah, I've aged 5 years. I hope now. Am I no longer the new guy? Have I shed that label yet?
1 year is the end of your cup of coffee.
Okay, so the cup of coffee's over.
Yeah, he's been here for a cup of coffee. That's done.
I heard Dave say I earned my stripes after the free throw thing. Which I took to mean like literally. I like there's some sort of process at Barstool, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I heard that and I was like, everywhere else you just kind of saying that, but I feel like here it was like there's like an actual like a ceremony I'm supposed to go to now.
We tattoo Barstool, like the Viva tattoo that Fasoli has. You get that after. Yeah. Dave proclaims your stripes.
That's all I ask is if such a thing exists as 1 year work anniversary gifts. I don't want to have to prove that I'm in on this Barstool thing anymore. Like I am. I'll still obviously do it. I just don't want I don't want a magnifying glass on me anymore that's like I want to have the ability, TJ, to say no to something at some point and not feel like I'm going to get killed for it as like not a team player or like not a, and I hope that I've earned that at this point, but I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I've obviously enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to many more years. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't realize it'd been a year, but yeah, that checks out. Wow, I gotta go home and think about some things. All right. Enjoy the weekend. Watch a lot of college basketball, and I'm gonna knock on wood. I don't want to jinx it or curse it, but my plan is to be back on Monday, and we'll put a show out on Tuesday. That's the plan, and I'm gonna do my damnness to see it happen. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. See you then.